My name is Mike Bordin. I'm honored to have been part of this podcast with the great Rudy Sarzo, and I've also been having a good time. I'm sorry that you completely lost control of your proceedings and allowed us to say whatever the hell we wanted.
The David Ellefson Show. Featuring Grammy Award winner David Ellefson and respected metal journalist Joshua Toomey. Presented by EllefsonEmporium.com. Here's David and Joshua.
Hey guys, what's happening? Joshua. What's going on?
How we doing?
Wow.
Joshua?
Hello, Mike. How we doing?
I'm good.
Good. Nice to meet you, Rudy.
It's funny, just a few days ago, we were right down the hall from each other eating breakfast, and now we're in like four corners of the earth again.
I don't know if y'all watch a lot of movies, but there's a thing in mob movies where they call it opening the books, where they all get together and they talk about, the guys who aren't there anymore, whatever. But
right.
To me, that whole thing was kind of special like that, where it's like a special occasion where you really gather all the sort of the homies and the tribes and whatever. And, you open the books. I mean, Rudy there, Mike Inez there, Jakey there, you talk about the people in the history of, that have gone before, lucky guys like me who got to play with Ozzy, but the guys who set it up, it's
well, the Osbournes sure know how to throw a hell of a retirement party.
That
was pretty. And it's funny, in the after party, I'm literally standing right there, and Ozzy sees me. He waves me over. He was in a great mood. He had that after show glow, right?
He was done. Yeah.
And so he waves me over. So I come over. I talk to him for a minute and telling him how great I thought it was. And next thing you know, Jack gets up and like, shut up, everybody. Everybody be quiet. He's whistling to get everybody quiet. And next thing you know, Sid the Third is proposing to Kelly, like literally right in front of me. I'm like, in what world does this happen? Like suddenly you're in the Osbournes family living room, so to speak, and you're watching this private, intimate thing happening where their daughter's ready to get married now. So many unexpected things like that happened. It was just, it was like I couldn't believe, Ron Wood was there. I mean, in what world do you get a frickin' picture with a Rolling Stone? I mean, and there he is just hanging out next to the Metallica guitar boat,
So you would have felt more comfortable then if it was just the baddest motherfucker on the block from the Faces or something,
dude. Right? Most people know him as the guitar player in the Stones. To me, he's that badass bass player from right. That's
right.
No,
yeah.
the badass player, bass player from Jeff Beck Group. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's him. That's him. Hey, another bass player.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, we did a recap the other night when I got checked in here. I dropped my bags, hit the shower, hooked my rig up, and Josh and I did a kind of the David Ellefson recap. So I want to hear you guys talk on this one and just kind of get a obviously a recap, but also Mike, you said something that I did not know because we were.
I'm sorry.
No, we were phoning each other because we were going over endings for songs, and we had a phone call real quick, and I didn't know that when Bill Ward was let go, moved out of Black Sabbath, you were the guy that was right there to take the position right at that time. Is that right?
97.
And how long did you do the gig? And that was why, because you were in Ozzy's band at that time? Is that why you got the call? Got it.
Yeah. Okay. I hate telling stories like that in some ways because it's kind of not my story to tell.
Understood.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's sort of Mr. Ward's personal dynamic with the other cats and that.
Right.
But as near as I can tell, I had started with the big boss there a couple of years prior. And we were comfortable. We were, rolling pretty hard. Ozfest had sort of just come up. I don't know what year the first Ozfest was, but it was, I don't know. I want to say 96, but I'm guessing. I have no idea.
96.
Right.
What?
96. Yeah.
I'm a bad guesser of dates and shit like that. Doesn't really matter. So the thing was coming back around that's what they wanted to do. And I mean, yeah, I was his drummer, so he was comfortable with me, and we sort of went into it together. But I think in some ways, I think at that point, there hadn't been anybody else that had stood on stage with the three legends, except for Mr. Ward. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of heavy ground, for all of them. Yeah. And going in there with the big boss, I think he felt better. And again, I'm putting words in people's mouths because I don't know. This is how it looks from where I sat, but it felt to me like he felt a little bit like somebody had his back.
Right.
Emotionally, whatever. Because, when you're getting back into that and revisiting all of that insanity, man, I mean, what didn't they do? What didn't they do to each other over the years? You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think you could, again, probably tell me if I'm right or wrong, but would the last time all those guys had stood on stage, would that have been Live Aid?
So here's what I remembered. So we did Ozfest, Megadeth, and we did Ozfest 98, and I think you and Robert Trujillo were in the band, right? With Joe Holmes
right,
at the time. Is that right? Okay. So then fast forward to New Year's Evil, they called it, New Year's Eve, right? And it was in Phoenix, Arizona at our Arizona Diamondback Stadium there. Bob, yep. And they had reunited with Ozzy. And Bill Ward was there, right? Bill was playing drums, right? So it was the four of those guys then. And that was big news that Ozzy went back, and now it was the reunited Black Sabbath. And I think best I know that stayed together for a while, right? Am I right about that?
That was 2000. So that was 3 years after what we just talked about. Remember? And they had done a full run with Mr. Vinny Appice as well in between.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember the Ozfest. So Rudy, it's funny. It's funny with both you guys being here, right? Because you guys both had these moments with Ozzy, and now you're back, on the stage, kind of the family reunion. You guys both got called. There were some people that didn't, to come back.
That's what I wanted to I just kind of wanted to ejaculate that sort of straight in. Why is that funny? I just wanted to throw that in before you go too far.
Sure.
When I think about what we just did, and I think about the history, and I think about, the personalities and the work we all put in, and the blood and sweat we all put in, contributing to that. I want to think, and this is what I was saying before about like the people that came before me.
Right.
Rest in peace, the original Biggest Dickus, Lee Kerslake. I wish I would have seen Mr. Tommy Aldridge there. Mm-hmm. He's a delightful, wonderful gentleman and can kick everybody's ass, even with one hand tied behind his back, And rest in peace, of course, the great Randy Castillo as well. So,
of course, yeah.
Those things need to be said,
That's cool. Well, thank you for saying that. Ahead. Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. So, Rudy, I've told this story before, and I think I might have even said this to you. So, you get in the band. Do you know Bob Daisley? Are you friends with him at all?
No, not really. I never played with him in the band.
Yeah. I became friends with him. I got introduced to him when Kings of Thrash went to Australia last year, and I got on the phone, had a great call with him because I'm just a fan of his, for his
great
especially those first two records, Abominog, Uriah Heep, Long Live Rock and Roll. Those to me are my Bob Daisley records. So, but so you come into the band, and it's funny because at the Ozzy Museum, did you go to the museum in?
No.
Okay, so you go upstairs to the museum in Birmingham. There, it's right in the city center, and in order to get into the sort of art museum, you have to walk through the Ozzy hallway, right? Which is super awesome, right? So that's where all the metalheads are hanging out. And, we're watching Ozzy. The one Ozzy video of you guys playing with Randy you said that was about a year before Randy had passed, right? That one.
Yeah, that was like about 2 or 3 weeks into our first tour, the Blizzard of Oz tour.
Got it. Okay.
Was that
So-
one from public television up there in upstate New York?
Yeah, in
After
Rochester.
hours?
Yeah, it was set up by
Incredible.
I believe it was he was the publicist for Jet Records, Pat Siciliano, and that was the only anything like that we did. As far as
That's incredible.
the videoing, because the plan was to what became known as the MTV Speak of the Devil video that was shown first Halloween of 1982. And it was planned that Randy was going to be a part of that. Also, it was planned that it was going to be us, including Randy, re-recording the Ozzy Black Sabbath songs.
Oh.
But live. And that turned into two separate Speak of the Devils. The live recordings at the Ritz in New York in a club, 2 nights, with the Black Sabbath re-recordings. It's only audio. It's not
Can
video.
I interject just for 1 minute and please keep on?
Yeah.
The way I had heard it, and I actually just read about it again, was that double live Sabbath Speak of the Devil, that was going to get him out of his record deal. That was like his final recording commitment for Jet, I believe, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That
But
was his last deal. That was his last record on the deal.
Yeah, being in the band 43 years ago, I wasn't, asking, so why are we doing this? I had no knowledge. All I knew was this is the next thing we're going to do. We're going to record these Black Sabbath songs live and video it too, for video presentation.
Right.
So then Randy passes away in March, but especially back in the day, or even today, that event last week, that was in the works for 2 years.
Yeah.
So things do take of that magnitude, take a lot of time to put together. So this one is at the beginning of the year, let's say February of 82, at the beginning of the Diary of a Madman was when it was announced to all of us that was going to be at the end of our tour. We were going to be recording and videoing us performing Black Sabbath songs.
Wow.
So how much time did you have to learn all those songs then?
Which ones?
The Sabbath songs for Speak of the Devil.
5 days.
Jesus.
5 days.
I mean, so
You never get time to rehearse.
Yeah.
So I mean, think about how much work we went into, because Mike and I were talking about this last week when we were over the endings. I was literally standing in this hotel room having this conversation, and we were talking about, I said, these 3 songs we're playing, it's like playing on the Grammys. It's like, I've got, several other gigs coming up, as we probably all do. All of that stops until these 3 songs are done and out of the way, right? And Mike, you said, he goes, oh yeah, this is it. Like this takes precedent. And Rudy, I mean, on the gig last week, dude, you played how many songs? I got the sheet right here. No, I guess
I played 7, including
7?
the drum off.
Yeah,
7 or 8 actually. Yeah.
You played your
about
ass
7 or
off.
8. Yeah.
It was so great.
It was
so
fun.
I
It was
want to go
fun.
back to Speak of the Devil real quick. So
Yeah.
so I'm a young guy, and I was literally just playing through Paranoid today because I have it on a set list for some other gig coming up here in August that I'm going to do, and not with Black Sabbath, obviously, just a personal gig, right? So it reminded me, as a teenager, I used to play Paranoid. That was kind of the only Sabbath song I knew. Then, Heaven and Hell comes out. It's 1980. It's Scorpions' Love Drive. It's Iron Maiden Killers. It's, the new wave of British heavy metal. Black Sabbath has singer Ronnie James Dio. Really a page turner, probably for guys my age, right? At that time, we were all probably about 15, 16 years old. And life moves on, right? And then, of course, Ozzy Blizzard of Oz comes out. Oh, my God, this is amazing. Awesome new band, right? And I don't know, for me, I didn't so much think about because I was too young. You know, I missed most of that Sabbath stuff. I just did, right? So I hear Speak of the Devil, and here's you playing all these Sabbath songs. I got to know Geezer's work through you.
Wow.
You were the guy. You were the
Very
guy.
interesting.
You were the guy when I got that record, because I was a huge Ozzy fan. I mean, big
Very
time. And I love
interesting.
Bob Daisy. So it was through your bass playing, I learned all of those Black Sabbath tunes, right? So thank you for practicing and getting them right, so I didn't learn the parts wrong. I
In the
appreciate
5
that.
days, yes.
I mean, there's only one right way to play those songs, and it is the way that Geezer plays them.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you did an amazing job. I mean, speak more to that, because you killed it on
Well,
it,
thank
right?
you. I appreciate it. I mean, coming from you, that's the ultimate, compliment, because I love your playing and I love you as my brother.
Thank you. Likewise. Well, and then you see, Josh, I'll let you weigh in for a minute, but then we see, I watched everything side stage, and I thought, for Ozzy and Sabbath, I want to go down in the pit. I want to be a fan. I wasn't even in the pit. I just stood out in the audience with everybody else, and Tobias is there. Rob Caggiano's there, fucking everybody's down there, right? And next thing Whitfield Crane, grabs me and pulls me into this little triangular little thing, and I'm sitting there with the Trujillo family, and now we're going to watch Black Sabbath, right? So, me and Rob, as bass nerds, watching Geezer, like every attack, every note, everything, and kind of, once you're in a band, it's kind of like, I guess, if you're an actor, you can never watch a movie the same, right? And so it's like, once you're a musician and you're in a band, you can't ever just watch it for just that sort of innocent enjoyment. And at least I can. I'm always kind of in the gig,
It's a bass lesson.
Dude, it totally was. And how kick-ass was Geezer, man.
Can you just get an amen for the sound of the great Terrence Butler that night? Sound that he had coming off the stage. Is it okay? I know you edit this, right? I'm very, very new to this.
Talk.
No, you're good.
We're not
do whatever you
we're
want.
not here to talk shit. This is all good love here. Yeah.
No, but I just want to make a left turn if I can. If you edit this, I'm going to walk downstairs because I have a picture that I really want to share with you.
Absolutely.
But how about the tone? How about the tone coming off of the stage, both with Tony, but also with Geezer? I mean,
unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, he absolutely killed it. When I did Sabbath in '97, I had a full stack on either side of me, facing from the back line inward towards me, like a one headphone and the other headphone, and one was Terry and one was Tony, and they were at times were so loud I couldn't actually hear them. I could only feel them. Where the air pressure is kind of blowing like that. And it was like you were stuck between an earthquake and a mudslide. Do you know what I mean? Like the overwhelming forces of nature, just unbelievable. I want to share this with you. I think you're going to like it a lot, based on what we were just talking about. I apologize. So anyway, keep on going, and I'll.
No, I like this. I like this Mike Bordin Cribs episode that we're getting.
Oh, hey, like a lot of people.
Hey, John. Josh,
okay,
in the meantime, what is that record that you have? You had that
Rudy. I just wanted to bring up, Randy kind of and busting this out. We go since it's show and tell. Oh, look at that.
So this is Rainbow at Winterland.
Yeah,
super legend. My buddy actually took this photo. I'm in the front row, and you can see at certain points my hands are up in the air in front of Richie, but that's the great man himself right there.
Look at
that. And there's Cozy, of course, and the great man in black himself. Yeah, that was a legendary show. They were actually opening at Winterland for REO Speedwagon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And where I come from in the Bay Area, there's a lot of kind of dirt heads, and I certainly was one of them. The promoter from the Bay Area, Bill Graham, he didn't really cotton to metal so much. He didn't like metal. He didn't respect it. He thought it was a trick, and he thought it was cheap, and so he threw Blackmore on there, opening for REO Speedwagon. Problem with that was that all of the people in the Bay Area that loved Blackmore came to see him and were freaking out. The place was exploding, right? And he's the opener. So Blackmore did his whole thing. where he kind of destroys the guitar and whatnot, and this and that. And Winterland was a fairly primitive gig. 5,000 seater. Hendrix played there. Cream played there.
Yeah.
Sex Pistol played there. That was the Sex Pistols' last show. They played there, and it had a front truss right at the very lip of the stage.
Mm-hmm.
And the staging was primitive there. It wasn't a lot going on. It was an ice skating arena originally. That's why they called it Winterland. And there was a front truss right there. And somehow he got his cord over the front truss, jacked his guitar, jacked his fake Strat, the fake one that he would blow up at the end of every show. He'd switch him like Paul Stanley or whatever and blow up a cheaper guitar, and jacked it back in and started pulling the cord, and the guitar's like a yo-yo up and down from the front truss, right? And the lights are swinging and the guitar's swinging and he's smashing stuff and people are going berserk. And what happens? The production manager for REO Speedwagon drops the curtain on him. He dropped the curtain. I'm in the front row. I'm
upstage.
and all I see is this dude with black satin pants on and white boots rolling around on the stage with some bigger dude, sticking his ass. And that was that show. It's a pretty legendary show.
That's fucking awesome, dude. What a great Blackbird story.
Even more then, and keep it for yourself or use it or whatever. But rehearsing with Ozzy back in the day, we would rehearse at Third Encore.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows Third Encore.
Yeah.
And we were there for a long time. And I ran into one guy in the office at Third Encore, and one of the guys that worked there, I don't remember who he was, a lot of nice people. And he said, "Oh, this is such and such. He's production manager for REO Speedwagon." I had to. I'm that kind of guy. I had to. And I said, "How long have you been a production manager for REO Speedwagon?" He said, 30, 40 years, whatever. And I said, "Oh, dude, really?" And I told him that story.
Right.
And you know what he said? "That was me."
That's
he
me.
was the guy that dropped the curtain on Blackmore.
And then fight Blackmore on the floor. Yeah.
Well, Blackmore was on him. I saw it. They were rolling around the floor. It was insane. So anyway.
Dude, that's some old school shit right there.
That's long live rock and roll.
Yeah, that's Bay Area rock and roll right there too. So hey, so Rudy,
sorry for the left turn.
No, but okay. let me dive in. Let me go with the record on this
put
one.
I was gonna say put that album up there.
We got Randy up there for you, Rudy. And the one thing that I loved about the show the other day was, obviously everybody kind of rocking the Randy shirts, and there was, obviously the photos of him while Ozzy was playing, and Ozzy, always tends to make sure to shout out Randy and things like that. So how was that for you during the show the other day? Kind of all of the memories of Randy kind of going around.
Yes, since I went back with Quiet Riot about 4 years ago, it's given me the opportunity to bring polka dots on stage with me, on my guitar, on my bass, on the pick guards. So I'm on my second signature model, which comes with the polka dot pick guard. So I always, of course, Randy was synonymous with his polka dot guitar and wearing polka dot bow ties. So I always bring him on stage with me. Nice. And he was the first person, the first musician, probably the only one who was actually born into a musical family. His mom and dad, music professors, and at a very early age, he got the proper education, academic education on, sight reading and theory and composition and everything. So he was a full musician, not just like the guys that I was used to, including myself, who were like more street. We learned by listening to the records or watching people around town playing, or do you want to wait for Dave?
No, we can keep going. Okay. He'll pop back on.
Okay. Oh, he's got a pee break. I get it. Yeah. And,
my show now.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, so Randy was the first one that I actually got to experience the difference of working, especially on original material, because that, again, that version of Quiet Riot, the one with Randy in the 70s, that I was a member from 78 to 79, right before he joined Ozzy, there was the purpose to exist was to get a record deal, be a professional touring recording band, not just playing, top 40, which is my previous bands. That's what it was all about. And the reason being most of the time was so we could make enough money to move to LA, to then save that money, because we knew we were not going to be able to make a living out of being musicians. So unless we would go to like Orange County, outside of LA, Hollywood area, where top 40 was popular, but then that would take away time from actually being a original band, because you have to pick one. What are you looking for? You're going to make money playing top 40, or you're going to struggle financially, maybe get a day job like I did, and at night you get together with your band and you write original music, and you go to clubs and invite A&R people, to come down and check out the new material, go and make demos. We used to have a connection at the record plant. We could actually make demos late at night when the bands were already done, and the house engineer wanted to get some experience being the main, the
Off hours.
Off hours. And so we would go in there and make demos and present them to the record company and so on, And meanwhile, the next day I would get up in the morning and go to my, I used to work at a burger place called McNaturals, which was a health food, fast food place across from Tower Records. And I'll never forget, like my first day at the job, I was trying to figure out the register, and I look up and it's Paul Stanley without the makeup. Now, this is when nobody had seen him without the makeup, but I could tell it was him, right in front of me. And so I'm like fumbling, and I take his order, and he would always order the same thing: a Wonder of the Orient. That was a sprout salad with a scoop of tuna fish.
Okay.
Can I ask a fan question?
Yes.
Rolling around with Ozzy as I have, he used to say a certain thing. Well, that guy's not going to make old bones. That guy's not going to make old bones. Meaning, he may leave us before his time.
Yeah.
That great man that we were just talking about, you've now sort of had to relive and digest and dissect and look back and examine, because of his stature, has just gotten so, monumental and enormous and legendary. When you just were kind of elbow to elbow with him, did you ever get the sense that you or he felt like maybe he might not make old bones? Did you always think, he was going to be there with you forever?
You mean Ozzy?
No,
or
Randy.
Or Randy.
I mean, you dissected everything else about him. Now, looking back at it, was there anything that you would think in your mind, maybe he knew?
Nothing at all. Nothing. No, he did not know. We did not know. No, he had plans.
Yeah.
He had plans. He wanted to go back to school and get his master's degree.
Yeah.
He on our tour book, that leg of the tour, the second leg of the tour, which is 2 days later, that's when the crash happened. When he saw that we were playing at the Garden, it's like, this is it. Yeah. This is what I've always wanted to do, play New York at the Garden. He had plans. What he did that day, getting up on that plane, I can give you a few reasons as to why he did it. But at that point in his career, he was just focusing on being the best guitar player that he could be, even to the point that he would take lessons on the road from local, teachers or schools. Or, like say he would this is 1982, he would grab the yellow pages in whatever city that we just happened to drive in, get off the bus in the morning. And he would, since his family had a music store / music school, his mindset was that the biggest ad is going to be the best school or place to go to. So he would look at the biggest ad in the yellow pages and call them up and book a lesson. And then he would show up, and 90% of the times he would give the lesson and pay for it to the teacher.
Classical / Spanish, right? That was really his interest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As a matter of fact, he stopped warming up before the show with his electric guitar, and he would just sit there, read music. He would have. I have plenty of photos of him doing that backstage before the show, and that's what he did. And then he would just hit the stage and be electric. Yeah,
classical Spanish, man. That
Mike, you've got this. You've kind of got the theme too with you and Cliff Burton, obviously growing up together.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That reminds me exactly of my homie, who, we love Phil Lynott and we love Geezer and we love all that. But the thing that really blew it wide open for him was Bach, and just the mathematical construction of how he Bach wrote out his music. And when Cliff started playing Bach as a teenager, something clicked in him. It's like, it gave him more tools, right, to do things and unlock what was in his head. And that's super well spotted of you, Joshua, because that's exactly what I was kind of thinking when I asked you that question. Mm-hmm. Is like, for me, I look back now over Cliff, and I do think that he had a sense that he wasn't going to be around forever. I do. Mm-hmm. I really do. And that's a trip, because when you're young, you think you've got all the time in the world. When you're young, you're going to ride on the back of your buddy's motorcycle with no helmet and short pants on and no shoes at 95 miles an hour through traffic, and you don't give a shit, and you think you've got all the time in the world until you don't. But I kind of do have the sense that maybe he had an idea, but yeah, that's kind of where I was driving. You're exactly right with that.
Yeah. And how cool would have that, obviously the event with obviously Black Sabbath, Ozzy, Metallica on the gig, Cliff being a big Geezer guy too,
Do you want to tell him, Dave, or should I? Cliff was on stage. Cliff was on stage that whole fucking night, man.
What was great is that
I brought him with me.
I stood side stage there to watch Metallica, and Robert's son Ty was there just as a fan, screaming, singing to Battery. Just like on the stage, like full on, like a mosher in the pit, but on the side stage. And there's his dad, like 20 feet away, like playing bass. And I thought that was, I thought that was so great that he was just there as a fan, of Metallica, even though his dad's in the band. The same way I went down front of stage to be a fan of Ozzy. And it's funny, the first time I saw Ozzy, Jakey Lee had just joined the band. It would have been 1982. Don Costa on bass. Tommy was in the band. I was bummed, Rudy, you weren't there, but and I guess you'd moved on to Quiet Riot at that point, I guess, and getting that whole thing teed up. But and seeing Jake, and I was like, dude, who is that fucking guitar player? This guy is badass. He was cocky. His hair looked killer. I mean, he was the new quintessential rock star. Obviously, as sad as we were about obviously losing Randy, because I think for, again, guys my age, there was Eddie Van Halen, and then once Randy showed up, that was it, game over. And Randy being more of a metal guy, right? The Ozzy thing being more metal than Van Halen was. It was kind of the next step there. Hey, I got to weigh in. I'm sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out here for a minute, so I jumped on my phone. But right when I came back, you were telling the story about Old Bones and Paul Stanley eating tuna fish on sprouts. Like, I wanted to hear more of this He's old bones, dude. He tuna fish and old sprouts are good.
Yeah, that's
I
an old
guess, right?
bones meal right there.
That was a great story, man. It's like when Dino from Fear Factory used to make me and Dave sandwiches over at Togo's across the street from the Palladium. Next thing you know, this band Fear Factory's on tour with Megadeth in '95, and I go, wait, that's a fucking kid from Togo's over there playing guitar in the Fear Factory, So,
But that's Hollywood, baby. That's Hollywood.
Yeah. Rudy makes fucking sprouts and tuna. Next thing you know, he's a fucking rock star. That's how the shit goes.
Who was it? Was it not Harrison Ford that was like the kitchen cabinet builder carpenter to all the stars back in the day?
That's
Probably
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do what you got to do, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're a starving musician, the place to go to is a place that serves food. So you're not starving anymore.
That's a great idea.
Or get a girlfriend that works there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she might break up with you. More steady if you're the one with a gig, Yeah.
Sadly, the kind of girls that put up with rock stars don't work at restaurants. They're probably hanging out at the Rainbow. You know what I mean? At least back in the day.
Or strippers.
Strippers.
They might work at a place with a lunch buffet.
Yeah.
Well, Rudy and Mike, you guys kind of hanging out, getting all the old, over the years, Ozzy members kind of in a room together. I'm sure you guys are trading war stories, and you guys can just kind of probably all get in a room and all have a common bond, even though you may not know each other well personally, but you all just kind of have that same, same pedigree, I guess.
I won't say pedigree. I'll say brotherhood.
Yeah, but that's a better
I'll
word.
pass it over to my esteemed colleague next door to me.
Yeah, you know what? It's since I was like the second generation of Ozzy's band, first being with Bob and Lee, and second with, of course, with Randy and both, with Tommy and myself, joining in. And I gotta tell you, it was paradise, with a lot of unpredictability from Ozzy. We knew that he was going to do something. It was predictable that he was going to be unpredictable that night on stage or off the stage or whatever. It was kind of like you're waiting for the moment to happen. Oh, there it is. Okay, this is something new. Like, fine. In Des Moines, Iowa, 1982, somebody threw in front of me this crumpled up thing, and I'm playing, and I point to Ozzy to check it out, and then I just put my head down and I just keep doing what I'm doing. At the end of the show, I'm looking around, and there's an ambulance on the side of the stage, and they're taking Ozzy in the ambulance. And I go to Cheryl, what's going on? And he says, oh, Ozzy, he thought that it was a rubber bat. He put it in his mouth and he bit into it and, realized that it was a real bat. Woo! And spit it out into the audience, and we cannot find it because they wanted to see if the bat had rabies. So just as a precaution, they say, you know what, we're going to take him to emergency and give him rabies shots. So we all get in the bus, go over to the hospital in Des Moines. We sit outside. And I actually saw photos because the tour manager, Jake Duncan, came in and said, hey, Rudy, can we borrow your camera? And I said, yeah, sure. So he goes in there, takes photos for publicity. So he's hamming it up. There's this big nurse that, giving him injections on his thigh.
Those are supposed to be some of the most painful shots that you can actually ever get to. Rabies shots are supposed to be excruciating.
Well, maybe he wasn't hamming it up because he was like, making that face he makes, So I actually saw the photos because, they took the roll out of my camera and then they developed it, within a couple of days. And we were looking at them like, oh my God. So anyways, once he is discharged, the tour manager brings in this little box with monkey serum, little vials, and the box said, do not drink monkey serum. And it's right next to like the cream in the refrigerator. We got yogurt and beer and milk and monkey serum.
First of all, where the hell do you get a bat? Where do you get monkey serum? I mean, like,
I
where does this shit come
listen.
from?
One night, what was it? Lubbock, Texas. Lubbock. I'm on stage and somebody throws what it looked like a baby on stage right in front of me. And I take another look. It was a bullfrog this big.
Jesus.
You trying
And
to
it
bite
was-
the head off that?
Yeah, very dead. Yeah, exactly. And this is, and at that, what we were, okay, right during those shows, okay, this is right after he pissed on the Alamo. So we were getting threats from the Daughters of the Revolution and all these Texas, you know, militant groups. This is again 1982, and so the thing was, okay, don't stand close to Ozzy just in case he gets shot. So every time Ozzy would come to one of us, either Randy or me, we were like running away from him. Like,
You might get something on you.
yeah,
Oh,
bullet.
Did you put this stuff in your book? Because you got your book off,
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
off the
yeah, I
rails,
did.
right? Isn't that what
Yeah.
it is? Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
did.
fucking great, man. God, I mean, the stories of this stuff. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's funny. Brad Gillis, you know, I got to know him and I see him every time he comes into town with, excuse me, with Night Ranger. And he showed me some great photos. And he was telling the story about how he got the call, you know, to go up there.
Can I ask you a question as a fan?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Did you ever get your eyebrow shaved?
Not me, because I was on stage, and what happened was that Ozzy wanted to get rid of Lindsey Bridgewater, our offstage keyboard player. He wanted him off the bus because he was not, according, you know, cool, a cool hand in the bus. So he wanted Lindsey to be traveling with the crew. So what he did is he slipped him whatever it was, a quaalude or something, right? So
Doom dots. He called them doom dots.
Doom dots. Okay. So there's Lindsey in his bunk. He had like a lower bunk. So all Ozzy had to do was just like kneel down, open up the curtain, and his head is there. So what he did is, not only did he shave his eyebrow from one side, he cut his hair, chopped it off from this side. Right? Okay. So, you know, so we're driving for maybe a couple of hours. And right before we got to our destination, there was a truck stop. And you know, we wanted to go and get some food. Okay. So Lindsey, you know, there's something about when you're asleep and the engine stops running, you wake up.
Yeah.
You know, that especially the old Eagle buses, you know, that vibrated so much, you know. So he wakes up and he hasn't seen himself yet. So we're all sitting in the lounge waiting for him. He goes to the bathroom in the bus, and we're just waiting for him to like get a glimpse of himself in the mirror. And we hear this, So he opens the door and just bolts out, and Ozzy grabs him by the shoulders and says, "Man, I tried to stop you from cutting your hair and shaving your eyebrows. You were so high that I could not stop you."
Oh, woo! Yeah, that was the trick. Owen would only get one eyebrow, right?
Yeah.
Did he get you, Mike?
No, that was way before me. Mine was
Okay.
Yeah, these were different days. Well, that's
far more well behaved, you know. But
Yeah.
but the guys that I rolled with initially, they lived through all that, and you know, it was all kind of, you know, talking with sort of misty eyed, you know, sort of what's the word? Looking back, you know, whatever that
Nostalgia.
word is,
Yeah,
remembering
nostalgia.
or whatever. And
Yeah.
did you work with Bob Thompson or John Sinclair?
Oh yeah, Bobby, yeah, of course, yeah.
That was my guy, dude.
I got a question for you because okay, we the Ozzy that I play with, this is the pre and post Randy's passing. It was he changed. We all did. we were traumatized. And I was just which is the reason why I left. My last night playing with Ozzy was the second night of the recording of Speak of the Devil at the Ritz in New York. There was there was no overdubs from me, and I don't think anybody else did. What you hear is just
Yeah,
what we
baby.
play.
Más
But
fuerte.
my question to you, Mike, is what was he like after Randy passed away? I mean, like, let's say Jakey Lee coming into the band, you coming into the band. How was he dealing with life?
That's a super excellent question, and if I may, I'll kind of I'll use it in the same light that about the question about making old bones. Because when Cliff died, we just went back out on tour, and some of us drunk more, some of us just kept smoking more, and you just put it in a box and put it back in the closet and forget about it and just move on. You can't deal with that, right? There's no way for you to process that. It's too big, it's too painful, it's too earth shattering, it's too everything. And what I saw when he was there with me, especially at the beginning, I came in 95, and that was right after he had that incident with Sharon, where he ended up going to spending some time in jail, and he was broken. He had not a lot of confidence. He had, I'd say he had felt like he'd been knocked down. You know what I mean? And sometimes when you're knocked down, it's hard to know when you get up, which way to go or how to proceed. But no, I mean, that was with those guys. Again, when I first came on, it was John Sinclair, fabulous keyboard player, great guy, incredibly funny English dude, old school dude, played with Uriah Heep, played in the Cult, and then our tour manager at that time, Bobby Thompson, who I think when you had Bobby, he was probably a backline guy or something else.
Don Airy, yeah,
was he
doing
Don's
Don
guy?
Airy.
Wow, and
Yeah.
another brilliant guy that's worth mentioning, the great Don Airy. But the guys that were there then, you could tell you kind of didn't really want to talk about it too much because it was very sacred. It was still incredibly fresh and painful and vivid. And it was a delicate, I don't know, what do you say? It was a sensitive topic because it was so emotionally charged, right? I mean, I tell you what, man, I mean, nobody's making any jokes about that kind of shit, in that world, because it was, I mean, I think in some way, and again, this is not my story to tell, and I don't do a lot of podcasts and talking for that exact reason, because I don't want to tell somebody else's story. It's not fair and it's not proper. But to me, as a fan, as an outsider, what it looked like was when he was X'd out of Sabbath, for all intents and purposes, like his life ended, right? That's who he was. That's what he did. And that was gone. What the fuck do I do now? Who am I now? Where am I going to go now? What do I do? And that's really scary. And that's all documented sort of when Sharon really saved him in that middle period, when Sharon was really there to help him sort of keep it together and try to move forward step by step. Well, then all of a sudden, you take this chance and you build this thing up and you get this incredible team together and these brilliant musicians and you have a little bit of luck and you have a lot of hard work. And all of a sudden you've got magic. And what Dave said, you got the Blizzard of Oz. Oh my God. And it's back on again. Maybe it's bigger than it was before. So what I'm trying to say is he gave him his life back, in some way, right? He gave him a second chance. I don't know what you want to call it. You know what I mean? And then that went away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does that hurt even more? because you've already lost it and built it up and felt good again. You know, like the horror movie ending, you know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, the big boogeyman and something happens and, oh, the boogeyman's dead. We got the boogeyman gone and we're good now. And then the boogeyman comes back again, you know? And that's that double horror trick ending thing where it really tries to shake you. And it's like, I mean, how do you, do you know what I mean? I mean, I think
So,
your question is just like, how was it around him with that? I mean, it was always heavy. It was always emotional. There were always tears with him about it. You know, it was always taken with seriousness and reverence, and it was heavy.
Yeah.
So, Mike, you take that thread with any of our careers, because you know what we're.
I hope that answered the question. I don't know.
We're paid to entertain, right? And too much in this world now, with podcasts, with interviews, with this whole day we live in where everybody has comments open, so all the keyboard warriors can weigh in on bullshit and everybody can be a Monday morning quarterback about everything. You know, the reality of it is, just like you said, man, it's a lot of hard work, hopefully a little bit of luck and all the rest that goes with it. And, you know, I remember, you know, when we were kids, you know, that Black Oak, Arkansas album, 10-year overnight success. You know, now we're talking about 40-year overnight success, right? And in the case of Sabbath, 50-year overnight success.
I love me some Black Oak, Arkansas. I just want to go on record and say that.
Okay, good. Yeah, not fade away from the midnight special. Come on.
That'll be the Blabbermouth headline.
Yeah, exactly. but you know, you talk about that, and so
could I? Oh, nope. He went away. Quick, I'm going to say something when he went away. My wife and all of our group of friends up here in the San Francisco area, they like to go to the bar and they like to do trivia, right? They love trivia. They're all about the trivia. And I don't give a shit. They only call me when they're stuck, you know, like I'm the wolf, you know what I mean? Out of Pulp Fiction, I'm the wolf and they get a problem. I'm the wolf and they call me. So here, this is what there. My fantasy, my total white boy fantasy of trivia is as follows. Name all the members of Black Oak, Arkansas. And this is not new. I'm not making this up. This is something I've thought about for a couple of fucking years. I'm waiting for this question to come up. Name all the members of Black Oak, Arkansas. Name their instruments, and name all of their nicknames.
Oh, wow.
Wow. But Mike, you know, going back to the subject of you and I being no,
I can't. No, God, no.
Rudy, go ahead. What's your question?
You know, just on the subject of, you know, being members of Ozzy at different eras. You're actually the first guy. See, I can't recall that I've ever had this conversation with anybody who was in Ozzy's band after I was in the band. You know, because you know, your experience from being in the band is basically Ozzy was the only other musician that was there when it happened, the loss of Randy.
Yeah.
Whereas when it happened, I was among Ozzy, Tommy, Sharon. We were all broken. Don Airy. We were all broken. The fortitude, the strength that Sharon had to keep it together. Yeah. See, you would think that it's usually the woman who's going to break down emotionally about something that happened.
Yeah, she couldn't.
And
hey, just to throw it in there.
Yeah.
God bless Rachel Youngblood as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. No, we were auditioning guitar players because here was the strategy. Keep Ozzy moving. Do not cancel the tour. You cancel the tour, Ozzy goes home, Ozzy dies.
That's right. He goes in the hole.
Yeah. It's over. So we got to go back out there again. And then we're going to pick it up here 10 days later after Randy passed away.
Woo.
And what happened was that Dave Arden, Sharon's brother from The Office in London, sends over what's his name? The guitar player, Bernie Tormé. Yes, Bernie Tormé. He comes in, and during auditions, he's already been hired. He's already been paid in advance to come in and play in the band. But he comes in, and he sits in a corner waiting his turn. And so actually, my brother was part of the audition, and he, Sharon and Ozzy wanted him to be in the band, right? And to continue. Okay. So when Bernie hears that, he says, "Oh, but I've already been paid. I've been sent here by." This is like 2 or 3 days of this is going on at least, of us. And Bernie's just sitting there. You already
The
had the
thick is
gig, but
in.
he didn't tell anybody, you know. So so this is the kind of like chaos that was going on.
Yeah.
Of course, this is in the day 40 something years ago when we didn't have texting, cell phones, whatever, all the kind of lines
Yeah.
technology to communicate, so things were just kind of like, and meanwhile, we were going to services for Randy and for Rachel. One day will be for Rachel. We will rehearse a little bit. Okay, we got to go to Rachel's funeral. Okay,
Jesus.
let's go. Okay, then we'll come back to rehearsal. Okay, or to audition guitar players, and then the next one. Okay, this is Randy's. That one we took the full day because we went to we had to travel from North Hollywood, Burbank, where his family church was and the service, then travel to San Bernardino, which is about over an hour away. In those days, we didn't have the traffic that we have now. So it would be an hour, and I was one of the pallbearers, and do the full service, and by then there was no way that we could emotionally return to rehearsal with Ozzy and everybody, Tommy and me and Sharon, having already buried Randy, so we took that night off. Uh, but what I'm getting at is that while I was up until the last day that I played with Ozzy, which was middle of September, when I did the last night of the Speak of the Devil recording at the Ritz, it was heavy. It was very, very heavy.
Yeah.
The feeling, the emotion of everything. So now imagine playing Black Sabbath music, songs like Black Sabbath. That bright. When I listen to that record, this is me right after Randy died, and I can really connect with the doom and gloom of those songs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah, it's
It's
real.
real.
The heaviness of it all, you know. And I left Ozzy because at that time I did not understand the importance or 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 of the musicians who were left behind. It is important for us to celebrate the music of those who have gone before us. Our band brothers. You know,
Exactly.
I did not know that then. All I knew was the pain that I was suffering at that moment of the loss that would not go away. You know, it took one. I wrote the book like 20 years, and I finished it in 2003, almost like 20 years later. And that's when I put everything that was have been on my shoulder for 20 years. I put that on the screen, and I wrote the end. This feeling of like lifted, this weight that had been on my shoulders all these years, and I got a closure out of it unexpectedly, because now this is everything that I had lived. When I wrote that book, every chapter, every page, Randy was in my head. I was talking with him. The hardest chapter to write was the last chapter where he was alive, because I'm reliving it. He's alive in my head. I'm writing it. I'm there. We're doing things together, you know. And once he was gone, that the book wrapped up really quickly, because I was kind of procrastinating a little bit,
Yeah.
and I had my publisher saying, "You gotta finish this. We got a deadline." I said, "Okay," and so I did. So so I this is the first time, and I'm glad you're sharing this with me, because imagine the pain that I felt to leave Ozzy, one of the biggest bands in the world, to join the complete unknown that was Quiet Riot, that nobody gave a shit about in LA. They thought we were dinosaurs, but at least I was, going to start fresh again with Frankie and Kevin, who I had a history with before.
And
I had just
Carlos as
met.
well, right?
Well, I did not know Carlos. I had
Oh, no,
never
yeah,
played with
yeah,
him
he was
before.
lovely, man.
Yeah, yeah, really nice. But as far as Kevin, I was in the band with him in 78, 79. I moved in with him about 8 months before I joined Ozzy. I was playing in his band, Dubrow. We had history. Frankie and I, we
Yeah.
went back 10 years. We
Nice.
grew up playing in Florida together. I met him on my birthday, November 18th, 1972, and we moved to LA eventually together and all of that.
Wow.
So, it was an emotional refuge that for me, because I got to tell you, Ozzy and Sharon, they were wonderful with me from day one. I moved in with them. I woke up the morning that I passed the audition. I woke up in Kevin DuBro's spare bedroom floor that I had been sleeping in. And that night I moved in with
Wow.
Sharon's family, you know.
Wow. Yeah,
Hey,
you don't
Rudy,
hear you
I
don't
want
hear
to.
that side of things much, right? About those guys. People tend to focus more on the business or negative or that, but
Yeah.
you know, a lot
Rudy,
of times
I
the
want to.
more you
Want to
listen, the more you hear.
Want to ask you something about this because you're in Ozzy's band, right? You're in Ozzy's band. My apologies. This was one of the bitches of doing a podcast on the road because you're subjected to fucking Wi-Fi shit everywhere. But
That's good.
I want to ask you this because as you were talking, so you're in one band, Ozzy. Randy passes. You go through all this emotional, turmoil, only to go back to the band that you used to be in with Randy, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
how was it back home now with Quiet Riot? Because
Yeah.
obviously now you're auditioning a new guitar player. You did not only did you audition a new guitar player for Ozzy, now you're back home in LA auditioning. Apparently, I
Yeah.
would assume you auditioned Carlos
Yeah.
for, right?
Actually, what I joined was called Dubrow.
Okay.
It wasn't Quiet Riot. Kevin was not playing any of the old material except for one song, Slick by Cadillac, that he wrote.
hmm
Everything was brand new material, you know.
hmm
Uh, then once I came back, it got renamed Quiet Riot.
Okay.
I have interviews on MTV, Kevin talking about that when we were, first talking, when the album first came out. The fan club for both Dubrow and Quiet Riot documented that going from Dubrow and now that Rudy's back in the band has been renamed Quiet Riot. So actually, I was joining Dubrow
I got it. Okay.
under the name Quiet Riot. We never went back to playing the old catalog that Randy wrote and recorded for
Got
those
it.
two Japanese record releases.
Now you know what's interesting about with Ozzy. Mike, you and I could probably speak to this, right? We learned about so many other bands because of, Ozzy went to LA to find his musicians, right? He gets Randy. We learn about Quiet Riot because of Randy and you, both of you. We learn about Night
Absolutely.
Ranger. We learn about Night Ranger because Brad Gillis is in, and then we learn about Rough Cut and Rat and that whole story through Jakey Lee, right? So there's like this whole, and that was right as I was moving to LA. I got there, and
He froze.
that was why we my back, sorry, and that was why guys like me moved there, right? Is because of you guys. We were all trying to follow in your footsteps. It's like there's gold out there, There
Yeah.
must be something great going on out there. And that's why me and my buddies moved from the Midwest to go out to LA and try to be rock
Mhm.
stars, So
Yeah.
you guys were the trailblazers for us, Go
Yeah. And
West.
there were trailblazers for myself who did it before me, back in the 60s and 70s. I moved
Mhm.
there in 77, you know. So there have been other musicians that came from everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
For me, I
So
mean, just to throw that in there until he shows up again. There he is.
There he is. There's
I,
Dave.
I
Hey,
took a
sorry
bit.
about that.
I took a bit of a left turn from
Nope.
there. I think I might be. I'm not sure how old Dave is or not, but I think I might be just a taste older than him. And certainly for me, my situation up in the Bay Area, I was into that shit pretty young. I was into that shit as an 8-year-old kid, you know, and that's 1970, 71. So when you're talking about those things, at that point, I've already sort of made a bit of a left turn and I'm listening to Motorhead, you know, and that to me changed a lot of stuff in my story. Cliff and I saw the Sex Pistols last show at Winterland, January 78. You know, that changed a lot of things in the story because that same year I saw the Sex Pistols at Winterland, but I also saw Rainbow, that show I was telling you about at Winterland. That was around that time, fall 77, and then Pistols were winter 78. So if you think about just those two bands together, right, in a space of less than 6 months, you know, all of a sudden that's kind of another big bang, you know, like Rudy said, all the people that he followed, whether it was Cream, I'm just guessing, you know, Cream or Cactus or Jeff Beck Group or Mountain or, you know, the OGs, man, they're doing it, the heavy stuff, you know. Then all of a sudden there's another explosion where you've got, you know, the Motorhead, Misfits, Pistols, Ramones, and that changed everything for my generation because all of a sudden we realized we can do it ourselves. We're going to do that too. I can do that, you know, and we did. So that was a big, that got us off of the dock, you know, and into the water in a big way. Do you know what I mean? That was
Def Leppard was kind of that band for me, right? Because you look at On Through the Night,
what
and on
band?
the back, you
Def
On Through the
Leppard.
Night, Def Leppard, right? You
How
go
old
through.
Can I ask you how old you are?
I was probably 15.
No, I mean
at the
now,
time.
today.
Oh, I'm 60.
So that's a similar age.
74. 74.
Respect.
34, nice. Yes.
So
I'll keep quiet.
was it Jack Bruce? Was it Jack Bruce for you, Rudy?
Oh, McCartney, James Jamerson, Jack Bruce, Carol
James
Kay,
Jamerson.
and Jamerson and Carol Kay, I only knew by their performances rather than their name because they were, you know, nameless back
Session
then.
guys.
You know, yeah. Jacko was in the neighborhood, so I used to go and watch him live playing around South Florida.
In Florida, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Florida.
The Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, you know, where all the clubs were. He was in the Wayne Cochran band, and they were like the house band at a place called the Newport, where all of the rock bands that play at
Was
the
that Wayne Cochran
Sportatorium.
and the CC Riders? Was that it?
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. He was the
Wow.
bass player for that. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I used to go to the Newport, and you know, there was like it's called the Lounge, but it's actually a showcase club, and just watch Jacko play every night. You know, and Will Lee was part of the Quinceañera circuit that I was a part of. So he was playing. You know, they would hire like 2 or 3 bands, like musical.
All the 15-year-old birthday parties.
Yeah, quinceañeras. Yeah. All the girls. You know. Yeah.
Wow.
And Will Lee, I mean, he was scary because, you know, his dad was the dean of music at the University of Miami, so he got some serious academic schooling.
Wow.
And he sang his ass off in English because all the other musicians that I played with, we were Cubans. So, you know, everybody was like Ricky Ricardo playing, you know, whatever was top 40 on the radio, basically, you know, with a Cuban accent, which to us was normal. Until that's why Santana took over so fast with us. You know, when Santana came out, that's it. We went in that direction because it was natural for us.
Yeah. Wow. That's
it's
interesting.
it's funny meeting Frankie Banali. Remember we did that Comic-Con, I think in Albuquerque or something. Remember, Rudy? We were there with Rex Brown, Tawny Katane, and then the guy.
I got the photo.
Do you have the photo? Wasn't that great? And then remember we went over to the Cobra Kai guy, the Johnny Lawrence, right? He was over there, right? And basically we all walk up and it's like his entire playlist, just his entire playlist just showed up between, Quiet Riot, fucking Megadeth, Pantera. It's like Whitesnake, he was in heaven, But we, going out to dinner that night and getting to know Frankie, I really took a liking to him. I did not know him before, but, really that guy was a hard-working, musician in the trenches, as we all are, right? But I understood it better from him. This is a
Lifer,
guy. Yeah,
soldier.
this is a guy who knew how to like book a gig, settle a show, like do the deal, right? And he had told me how I guess he and Kevin DeBro made the deal that if something happened to one of the other would basically, that was the deal, is they would get the estate or they would take over the band, right? So, so now here you are, you're in Quiet Riot, you're last man standing to some degree, right, from that era, and which I think is great. I saw you when you came through Phoenix a couple years ago, and I thought it was just great that you're holding down the fort and you're flying the flag for that. So what are you, I know you're out, working regularly now. So how is that now? I mean, talk about all of these transitions, and now you're last man standing, with Quiet Riot. You were just there with Ozzy. I mean, it's like, talk about the guy who's gone full circle and
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Yeah. For me now, it's become I have a purpose bigger than anything. For example, what used to drive me for being a musician was all the wrong things. Before I got married was so I could, so chicks would like me. I've been married for over 41 years now. So I just played for one girl, my wife.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good man.
And
Good man.
the all because I wanted to be a rock star and everything that came with being a rock star. Not necessarily drugs and alcohol, because then I would have never left Florida because it was so easy to get there.
Yeah.
So it was, I wanted to be a recording artist, be respected, create music, you know, all the things, that I guess the average musician wants. And now it's a whole different purpose. Now is my purpose is to celebrate the legacy of the band Quiet Riot, that with me dates back to 1978, the Randy Rhoads era, and the memory of Frankie Banali and Kevin LeBrow and Randy. That's it. And I just go up there on stage and and have a wonderful time because it's coming from a different place. And it was so a different feeling to get up on stage last Saturday because I didn't have that. I didn't have. It's almost like, okay, I'm playing with Quiet Riot. I am different. I have a different role. When I get up on stage with all that the group B,
Right.
right?
Super
You
group.
got up
Yeah.
there with the
Yeah.
group A, you guys.
Yeah.
It was like a clean slate for me. I'm there. The reason why of course, Sharon Ozzy, just like you guys, they invited you guys, they invited me, and my highest purpose for showing up was in gratitude. I wanted face to face to see Ozzy and Sharon, and tell them how grateful I am for giving me Rudy from Cuba, which is what Ozzy called me on his first interview when they asked him who's playing bass. I had just gotten the gig. He did not know my last name. So he said, "Oh, we got Rudy from Cuba on bass." In the Circus magazine, I have it.
Awesome.
And for giving Rudy from Cuba, not only his first break, I mean, without that break, I don't know what had happened to me, for taking me from sleeping on the floor to moving in. Sharon opened the doors and says, you can live with us.
Wow.
Mhm.
You can sit at our table, have breakfast, have dinner. And then on the tour bus, we were on the same tour bus. You know how it was, same
Yeah.
hotels, everything. I was part of the family. And about being part of that family. It's a very close circle, very
Yeah.
close. Only few people really get to be part of that family, and it's an honor. And wow, so I just wanted to thank them. The day that I joined the band, right after I got the audition, I'm playing pool with Ozzy up at the Sharon's family home, and everybody had gone to bed, and just Ozzy and me talking. He's telling me how much he appreciates what Randy has done for him, and and then he takes a look at my clothes, And he goes, man, you look like shit. And then he just walked, you need some rock and roll clothes. So he just walked out of the pool room, came back with a suitcase and dumped it on the pool table and said, grab whatever you want. And it was clothes that are recognized from album covers, magazines. It was his wardrobe. He's telling me, here, take whatever you want. I grabbed a couple of things and jackets and nobody ever did that for me. Since then, before then, it was
Right.
amazing. So it was like, okay, I had no idea what was going to happen at the show. All I knew is I'm going to see Sharon, I'm going to see Ozzy, and thank them for saving me, changing my life. Then I get there, and I realize that everybody's there for the same purpose. So now you got this collective consciousness that is just, this is what we're here for.
Mhm.
And it was the most elevating experience I've ever had. And and you guys were there, and I know you know what I'm talking about.
It's really
Yeah,
well
yeah.
said. That's really
It's
well
great.
said.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Can
I
I
would
make some
agree.
comments?
Please, yeah, I was going to go to you to close it up here and give
Oh,
us your quiet.
I'm going to talk about myself, but I got a lot of comments.
Yeah,
To
please
my
do.
esteemed colleague over there.
No
Hey, it's rhythm section
Down
stuff.
there.
It's rhythm section stuff. You've earned the right to do whatever the fuck you want. Period. Number one. Number two. I think it's fascinating, and somebody should look into this. But the Latino contribution to rock and metal, Mike Yanez, Randy Castillo,
Lombardo.
Carlos. I mean, Trujillo, for God's sake. That's fascinating, and I don't think that's nearly well discussed as it should be. And what is Dave Lombardo, another Cuban? I
Mhm.
mean, I think it's fascinating, and I know there's a gigantic. There's a lot there, and I think it's fascinating. Is it because of, like our boys from Sepultura from Brazil? Is it because of rhythm? Is it because of feel? Is it because of just straight up passion? For music and art? I don't know, but the Latino connection to rock and metal is massive. I'll say that.
Okay, for me, and I'm going to put this in a nutshell because there's books written about this. Uh, the cradle of what we do musically is African. If you're playing in a Afro-Cuban Latin band or just Latin bossa nova, whatever, Brazilian, it comes from Africa.
Machito.
You know, and the difference was that the Africans that were slaves, and I hate that word, but there's no other way to say it. Because if I would say the ones who visited the United States, no, come on, it is what it was, right? And they were not allowed to play their percussion instruments in the plantations because the plantation owners were afraid that they were going to communicate with other plantations and create a revolt. So, except for a pocket in Louisiana, which was French,
See,
that's where that rhythm comes in the United States, jazz and all that. Okay, the rest it was guys singing spirituals in the cotton fields, kind of keeping time,
yeah.
passing the time of while they're slaving over cotton, and the banjo is actually an African instrument originally. It came
Wow.
from that. So
Okay.
now you what we have, let's say growing up in Cuba, I grew up listening before rock and roll. I ever heard rock and roll. I was born there, and I we came to the United States in 1961. I was still 10 years old, almost 11. Uh, all I knew was Latin music. It was music to me. It had no label. This is music. And then with the British invasion, that's where rock and roll really went into the radio, top 40 and all of that. And it wasn't just the big Beatles, it was the Stones and the Kings and everybody else that came after that. And what I found was that connection still sounds African. It got the
Wow.
beat, it's got a pulse, it's got a beat, and it's a 1-4-5. Latin music, which is called Punto Guajiros, it's all 1-4-5 progression. Like
Wow.
even La Bamba, it's a 1-4-5. Da, 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 and so, and again, it comes from Africa, the 1-4-5 progression, and so I felt very connected to rock because to me it was total freedom, expression to free yourself, and it was youth-oriented music. And I was a kid then. It spoke to me, everything about it, and it was being performed by young people, so I could really relate to that. I was 13 years old when the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan, and George Harrison, which is maybe 5 years older than me at that time, so we had that connection. We were kids, yeah.
But you also, you related to it, like you said, structurally anyway. You were familiar with the sort of how it was constructed. So that all of a sudden now it's not like you're standing on the curb and there goes a shiny car and you say, well, that's a really cool shiny car, but you're almost like inside the car and you understand how it works, right? So you can make it work too. And that's really empowering, right? Because then not ownership, but you're invested more in it, because you're not just looking at it like from afar, you're in it. And that's exciting.
And Mike, and you being a drummer, I think you're going to understand what I'm talking about. Back then, the drummers came from swing big bands.
Hell yes.
The first generation of rock drummers.
Hell yes.
They all play, Mitch Mitchell,
Krupa.
John Bonham, Ringo, Charlie
Bill Ward.
Watts, Bill Ward. They all came from big bands, and they played like that.
It was Krupa, Louis Bellson.
Yeah, exactly. So we, as part of the rhythm section, it was totally different. We played with soul. We played with drummers conducted the band. Yeah. We were playing Black Sabbath songs last week, and it's like tempo changes. Like Snowblind.
Yeah. Right.
All those different parts.
Wouldn't you say Bill Ward? Bill Ward really had this. It was more of a jazz drummer, I think.
Goddamn right he was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
He
Mike,
still is.
I mean, Mike, you had to play the parts, right? So, that to me, when they were playing, Gar Samuelson and Megadeth was like that, right? So I got that. There's all these different changes. There's tempo changes. Our material was very similar to that, the early stuff. So watching them play that, was like, I'm going, oh my gosh, these songs, there's a few lyrics, there's a chorus and a verse and some stuff, but then there's these huge musical breakdowns, these big free forms, jam sessions in there. So much so that Bill didn't take his shirt off. It's getting hot up there. You know what I mean? Which is
Yes.
so fucking,
Yes.
that's like the most metal part of the show.
Yes.
It's like, fuck yeah. Bill's going old school.
No, there always has been that component. And I think I said it to you, Dave, in rehearsal. I got to be careful when I say the F word, because it scares some people. But to me, music to be really heavy, for me, music to be really moving, it's got to be funky in some way. Yeah. It's got to have that feeling. I got to be very careful saying that F word around, rock and rollers. Sometimes they don't even know it. But you feel it.
We had some of that dialogue when we were going through some of the transitions. Jakey Lee was very on point because he plays really behind the beat. Way behind the beat. And Nuno would come up and just he was kind of talking through some transition parts to just, to really kind of get it to lay back. And Nuno's another guy, right? He's Nuno's a guy who's got great feel. He's, not only does he have all the licks and the flashy, fancy stuff, but he's got just fundamental groove built into him. I always notice that when Extreme was even on MTV and they're playing some of those really ripping tunes they had.
I mean, but his band is funky too, right?
Totally, 100%. Big time.
Extreme,
big time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Big time.
But Bill, I mean, being blessed and fortunate in my life to speak with, one of my heroes, that I mean, I was the kid that I didn't have enough Black Sabbath t-shirts. So I took a page out of Circus Magazine and sent away in the mail and made a t-shirt out of a picture of Bill Ward, playing drums under that hanging cross that he had. I mean, that guy's one of my heroes, dude. And to talk to him like that. And I mean, it's all about swing. It's all about feel. It's all about cinching up your belt really tight and not having any underwear on and letting everything below your belt line just wiggle around. And, that's what it is, man. That's how it works, right?
No, we're not drummers. We'll take it from you that's how it is. We got 3 bass players between Josh, me, and Rudy. So we'll go with that. Let everything below the waistline, let it wiggle and hang out.
It all wobbles, dude. That's it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be. Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Well, guys,
this has been amazing.
Are you playing with Johnny Kelly still?
Oh yeah,
he's great.
Johnny. Yeah, he's great.
So
I love
great.
Johnny.
He is great. Yeah,
a good, solid dude and a great player and a good hang. He's a good dude.
All the above. Yeah.
All that Ozfest. We did so much Ozfest with Typo.
Oh yeah, he told me. Yeah.
We could go on for probably 3 hours here. This is and just so everybody viewing this is what this was like all week in Birmingham. Just like this. This was the conversation, right?
I didn't know that we were still rolling. I thought we were just.
We haven't even started yet, actually. So welcome to the David Ellefson Show.
Let's put some tape. Yeah, sorry, guys. Again, this is one of the bitches about trying to do a podcast on the road. Sometimes fans will go, "Man, Ellefson needs a new mic." Man, the internet site. It's like, yeah, it does, but this is it. We're rogue, Unfortunately, Josh is at the home studio, but this is how we roll. We go, hey, let's jump on right now. Let's do it. And so thank you guys for being so kind to just get on. And, this is we're all just kind of debriefing. We all got heavy metal hangovers from the week, and it was a pleasure hanging with you guys, playing with you guys, and it was just the beautiful gig that it was. So thank you guys for just coming on the show. And Josh, thanks for holding it down, man. I appreciate it.
No, this was a great
legend.
One. This got deep.
Legend.
This got deep. I love
legend.
Legends.
My name is Mike Bordin. I'm honored to have been part of this podcast with the great Rudy Sarzo, and I've also been having a good time. I'm sorry that you completely lost control of your proceedings and allowed us to say whatever the hell we wanted.
Fuck yeah, go for it. That was the whole point. I actually got to go back and watch the podcast to see what I missed. So it was awesome. So, all right, brothers, love you guys. Thanks so much. We'll be in touch.
All the very best. Blessings to everybody.
God bless.
Bye.
Cheers.
See ya.